currently under international law, starvation is primarily understood as a humanitarian issue, as a violation of the laws of war, as an international criminal, as a matter of international criminal law. And the limit of that is multiple limits to that. One, conceptually, that starvation doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen just in war. Starvation is the result of choices that are made over decades. You have decades of slow violence, and then when that moment of starvation happens, often in the context of war, it's like flipping a switch, right? So the question is, how was it even possible for one group to starve another? And the report, so it looks into that you have to look at the political economy, you have to look at systemic human rights violations that are happening over decades in the food system. You're looking at land grabs, occupation, the commodification of seeds, etc. The other limit of only thinking about starvation in terms of international humanitarian law and international criminal law is in terms of accountability. As you know, probably, that the current prosecutor of the International Criminal Court is seeking warrants for 2 Israeli leaders, and part of the claim is crimes of starvation. And I'm following this case closely, and we'll see what happens, and I think that's important to hold individuals accountable. But it's not just bad people doing bad things. How were those individuals able to do this? This is a systemic issue. We should be able to hold countries and corporations accountable. On the specific issue of the Palestinian people's food sovereignty, this report answers a very specific question. How was Israel able to starve 2.3 million Palestinians in Gaza so quickly and so completely? We have never seen in modern history this speed of starvation ever. And the report answers that question. Of course, this doesn't start in October 7. You can go back multiple points in time. You can go back to 2000, when Israel began its siege, its blockade against Gaza. So in 1991, Israel starts to restrict the flow of goods and people in Gaza. By 2000, it's now has its military and settlers occupying Gaza, and they impose a blockade, causing profound rates of hunger and malnutrition. And around 2005, by 2007, Israel withdraws its military and removes its settlers, but now imposes a siege. So it continues its occupation of Gaza by controlling and blocking the border. So from 2000 to 2023, Israel has a profound degree of control over Gaza. And it's like a faucet that you tighten and loosen. And they would make sure that the Palestinians in Gaza were just hungry enough to not raise alarms. They were counting calories and measuring what is allowed in to make sure that everyone remained hungry in Gaza, but not so hungry that it raised alarm bells in the international humanitarian world. So that on October 6th, 2023, half of people in Gaza were food insecure and 80% depended on humanitarian aid. Which is why then when Israel declared its starvation campaign on October 9th of 2023, by December, we suspected everyone in Gaza, by December, everyone in Gaza was hungry. And I spoke to the world's leading famine experts, and they said, we didn't even know how to measure famine this quickly. They didn't know it was so unique. But of course, it's not just Gaza. This is not a war in Gaza. This is an Israeli assault against the Palestinian people. In the last 2 years, we've seen record violence against Palestinians in the West Bank, especially peasants and farmers and shepherds. We've seen, I just put out a press release yesterday, I believe, on the increased violence and the uprooting and burning of olive trees. What's at stake with the olive tree? Olive trees live for thousands of years. It is people's relationship to their ancestors, and how they take care of olive trees is how they are taking care of future generations. When Israeli forces and settlers are uprooting olive trees, this is an attack against the Palestinian people as a people. This is part of this genocidal campaign. The attack against UNRWA is not just a UN agency. It is a UN agency that ensures the food security for Palestinian refugees in Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, and the occupied Palestinian territories. UNRWA also holds the land claims for for many Palestinian people when they were made refugees in the Nakba in 47, 48. So by attacking UNRWA, what Israel is trying to do is undermine the Palestinian people's right to return to their homes, to their territory, to Palestine itself. So that is what at stake. Benjamin Netanyahu announced Israel's annexation plan in the General Assembly in September 2023. And that's what's happening today. This is an attempt to use starvation to displace people, to kill people, to annihilate people, as an attempt to erase the Palestinians from history and from their land in order for Israel to fully annex Palestinian territory. And we see that their annexation plan continues now into Lebanon. I look forward to your questions, and I'll turn it over to the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Israel contends that it is supplying enough food, that it's provided, I believe, 1 million tons of food. How do you answer that? Have you spoken to the Israelis about your latest report, and what kind of a reaction have you gotten?
Great. Thank you, Edith, and I've read your work before, and thank you for following this issue so closely. From what I have not directly communicated with Israel, they did not attend today's session. However, I have raised this issue since October 2023, where Israel has been present, and to date, Israel has not denied or provided a substantive argument against the claim that me and many of my colleagues have made, that what they are doing is using starvation and engaging in genocide. To your question more specifically, what Israel has said is that that adequate calories are entering into Gaza. I have several responses to that. One, calories are not food. Two, based on a year-long starvation campaign and a 24-year blockade and siege, allowing a few more trucks to enter in now does not actually address the humanitarian needs. But most importantly, what Israel is saying contradicts everything every humanitarian organization is saying now and has been saying. I have spoken to humanitarian organizations, UN and otherwise, directly, and the consistent message from them has been and remains that Israel's rules on what is allowed in to Gaza is opaque and absurd. It's a system designed to be confused, to make it very difficult for aid to enter. Then, if we look over the last year, whenever humanitarian aid actually makes it through, those convoys often are shot at and targeted by Israeli forces, even though those convoys are coordinating with the IDF. And then even if those convoys get past that, civilians seeking aid have been shot at and killed several times. I'll add even more. Israel has imposed a full siege against Gaza, and especially northern Gaza, at several moments. So just because, even if it were true that Israel is allowing in a few more trucks today, that does not mean that they are not starving the Palestinians in Gaza. To deny people objects necessary for their survival is starvation. Israel announced their starvation campaign multiple times. They have done so multiple times. So even if we believe what they're saying is true, that they're allowing in more trucks, that doesn't change the fact that this is still a starvation campaign.